Welcome to the Emotionful Dad Channel. I'm Rob. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to jump into something like we usually do. Maybe something a little serious. Maybe something with some strategies. Maybe something a little silly. But no matter what, I hope you enjoy. So let's get started. Today we're going to talk about what it means to be emotionful. It's a little bit of a mouthful. Probably sounds a lot like mindful, and there's some reasons for that. Being emotionful embodies that same presence and that same non-judgmental stance that we see with mindfulness. But it includes that idea of accepting and acknowledging and appreciating every emotion that comes along, whether they're good, bad, or ugly. Now, bad is not exactly the word I want to use, and ugly is not exactly a kind word either, but emotions can feel that way. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about ways to think about them a little differently, to feel them a little differently, and maybe even come to appreciate the whole range that we have. If we took away some colors from a rainbow, it wouldn't be as beautiful. And if we took away some emotions from all that we can experience, we might be missing out. So let's dive in and see what we can do with our emotions. The first piece about being emotionful to me is acknowledging the feelings, just even noticing that they're there, being willing to bring it to the forefront of our mind or to admit it to ourselves that this is what I'm feeling. So many times I know I have tried to shove away difficult emotions. I don't want to think that they're there. I don't want to feel them. I don't want to have to deal with them because life is too busy, or there's too much going on, or too many people need too many things from me. Whatever the reason, the whole point here is if you can't acknowledge that they're there, if you can't bring it to the forefront, it's a lot harder to do any of the other steps, which, again, we'll get to in a minute. But that idea of acknowledging can actually be very empowering and freeing. If I can acknowledge this is how I feel, it's no longer something that's outside of me affecting me. It's something that's inside, that's a part of me. I generally have control over a lot of the parts of me. So again, that idea of acknowledging and bringing it to the forefront can be very relieving. Gives us that sense of control or even release. Because again, there's nothing worse than trying to shove something down just to have it pop back up 2 minutes later. So one thing I oftentimes hear is this idea that there are bad emotions. I get what people mean. I don't like feeling sad or overwhelmed or angry, which, especially one of my hardest ones. But again, think of this idea of what can emotions be, and what if we didn't have some of them? What if we never felt worried? That sounds great, right? I use this example all the time with a lot of my clients, but it's this idea that if you never worried or never cared, you wouldn't have a job. You'd probably smell pretty bad because you wouldn't worry about if anybody cared that you smelled, and pretty much just be a blob on the floor because nothing would motivate you. So again, it's not a bad thing. Just too much of it or too little of it can be too hard. So the whole idea behind being emotionful is starting to reframe what those emotions can be, not just how they feel. Because again, emotions are more than just a feeling. There's something behind them. There's some information they're trying to provide us. Just can we listen? Can we learn how to hear what is underneath? So think of this idea of what is this emotion telling me? If you can be present with any emotion, even happiness, even pride, even something so good that we just don't want to think about anything, and start to consider what does this mean to me? What is this telling me? We could maybe be a little surprised at what we might find out about ourselves. 1, about the world. 2, about others. 3, maybe even about our kids. Because they don't know how to cope with these emotions. And by us showing that emotions can mean more, we might be setting them up for some greater success in managing things that are going to be a part of life, that are going to be hard at times, that are going to be so amazing at times. We just don't know. And we can't necessarily control that they happen. We can choose what to do with them. So now that we've talked about what emotions can mean to us, let's also talk about accepting and even appreciating them. Because that's the big piece where going from being emotional turns to being emotionful. Being able to feel the fullness of all of those experiences without the judgment, with even some appreciation of the fact that we can. Because there is a downside to not feeling. Not feeling could be a huge catastrophe, could be really affecting how much we appreciate and enjoy life, even if that means we're not feeling the bad of life. I've worked with so many people who have felt this emptiness is even worse than feeling bad or feeling sad or feeling overwhelmed. Just the lack of it, because that desire to not feel those bad led to shutting down too much. Again, nobody chooses that on purpose. Nobody says, I am going to make sure I don't feel anything. But think about when we're feeling those difficult ones. That's what we want. That's what we desire. We want the bad to end, and the good to come back. But what if we were able to just be? What if we were able to appreciate that those feelings were there and that they can tell us something and that they might even actually help us and be good for us? That peace, that acceptance, this is what I'm feeling. Not this is a bad feeling, or this is a good feeling, or this is what I should be feeling. You'll find out about me the word should. Don't do it. Well, most of the time, don't do it. But again, this idea of feeling, if we can accept that it's there, acknowledge that it's part of the experience, we can eventually come to appreciate. I have learned over time to appreciate that sometimes when I'm sad, that pushes me to have to figure out what's going on. Why is something wrong? Why do I feel like I'm missing something? I never would have started this without that. If I wouldn't have felt overwhelmed, I wouldn't have potentially been willing to take a risk to start something new like children's books or parental self help books, or even putting myself on the internet. But again, if I wouldn't have had that overwhelm from other pieces or wouldn't have felt any of the difficult feelings I had felt, I might never have taken the chance because I would have been too comfortable. And one way to appreciate feelings is to acknowledge what they do for us, not necessarily how they make us feel. In other words, appreciate that it pushes you, that it moves you, that it motivates you, that it slows you down, that it surprises you, that it pushes you to have different experiences, that it drives you to see new in life every day. Because again, one of my big theories is if you're not changing, well, you're pretty stuck because everything's changing around you. So emotions allow us to adapt and to overcome a lot of challenges. Okay, that's a lot. So to sum it up, 3 pieces. 1, acknowledge. Bring emotions to the forefront so we can be aware of them, which allows us to begin to accept them, to incorporate them into our lives as ways to foster change and growth, which then allows us to appreciate. And appreciating the full variety and full impact of all of the things in our lives lets us live more fully and be a wonderful example for our kids. This is all a lot, and that's okay if you don't have it all figured out. I certainly don't. The hope is that this gives you a couple of pieces to think about and to use and to move forward with every day and to practice. Because as always, practice makes progress. We'll never be perfect, but we can always strive for more. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me today. I sincerely and truly appreciate it. I hope you found something useful. Feel free to leave comments below if you have any ideas for any future videos, or if you just want to let me know what you thought about today's content. And no matter what comes, keep feeling and take care. I'll see you next time. If what we talked about today is useful, helpful, or even interesting to you, I would really appreciate if you consider subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing what I do here on this channel. It would make a big difference to me and go a long way to help support me in doing more. And if you're even interested in more, check out my website. I'll put a link down below in the description of this video. Check it out. There's more about my children's books, my parent self-help books, music, movie recommendations, some by me, some by my silly daughter. And there's also much, much more, including some information about how to seek out professional support if you ever need it. So I'd love if you check it out. And if not, simply thanks for being here today. I'm glad you came. Thanks for watching. See you next time.